TheAudience is a fascinating new business, founded by the man we are about to hear, funded by, there are others, but funded by Sean Parker from Napster, Ari Emanuel, who runs William Morris Endeavour. A new sort of way of looking at content, branding, and marketing. Some might say disruptive, some might say evolutionary, some might say revolutionary. Oliver Luckett is a man who is well known in Hollywood and is bringing his insights to Rome today to tell us a little bit about how his new business, having led the social media revolution at Disney, how his new business is positioning itself around the culture of celebrity. He's a man who works with some of the world's top and most interesting celebs. The most interesting insight is that he recently advised Russell Brand, the comedian, on how to route his comedy tours in line with the geography of the fan base that he had in social media. That's pretty smart, yeah? Understanding the new world of social. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Oliver Luckett.
Hi, can everyone hear me? So, I'm a total outsider. I've never met this many advertising people in my life. I like you. I think you're fun. You definitely know how to drink. I'm from Mississippi, and I thought we knew how to drink, but wow, you really can drink. So I'm suffering a little bit from that, but and a few time zone differences. But what I want to share with you today are really a hodgepodge of ideas that I've learned over my course of my career. TheAudience is my 7th company that I've started. I literally have started my career based upon what I call the OSI network stack. I started in fiber optics and in voice over the internet, and that was remarkably disruptive. It did not make better phone calls. They're actually shittier quality. But what it did is it introduced flat rate pricing in a business that was on a per minute basis. And that really changed the way telecom had to embrace the consumer and the products it created. I then started what some call the first video sharing network in 2005. It was a company called Rever. I invented the model that YouTube now has of paying content creators for video objects as they move through the social graph. I basically upload content, put advertising either around it, inside of it, at the end of it, and then share that revenue. That's really what YouTube Partner Program was. I made a fundamental mistake, though. I got kicked out of that company because I fought Comcast and Turner and Time Warner as they took a very different stance on copyright and forced me to screen with a human being watching every video that came into the system. And YouTube chose the other path, and they won. And I was kicked out right before Christmas. Classy. So I have a great disdain for most media companies. And so after that, I started a little company called Digisend, which I sold into Disney exactly 1 year to the date of starting it. And that's where I kind of sought my revenge upon media companies because Bob Iger, the CEO, and Kevin Mayer, the head of corporate development there, embraced my kind of wild attitude and put me in the company as an insurgent in the company. That was kind of my title. And I went up and down the organization and really did, I think, some fundamental changes. First is that those companies, Disney, Warner Brothers, Time Warner, all of these different media companies had very draconian ideas of copyright because they had always controlled distribution. And so I went in and changed that, and I opened up 64 million pieces of art to the internet. And now Disney and the social network that we created inside of Facebook and YouTube and Tumblr, in Facebook alone, 280 characters of Disney now reach 1 billion unique people. The counter just broke when I was on the plane coming over. I had to send them a note to fix that. It might not ever get fixed, but that's what happened. I left there and went with Ari Emanuel and Sean Parker and started TheAudience a little bit under 3 years ago. Today, we are a company that is the world's largest publisher that no one knows about. We reach about 1.2 billion unique people a month inside of social systems across about 1,400 influencers, where we either program all of the content, program some of the content, or just simply plug them into our management system that allows us. But we're a very interesting beast. We're as if you took a media company and combined it with an advertising agency and combined it with a PR firm and then combined it with a media buyer and kind of lumped it all in one interesting amalgamation of, I think, some very smart and creative people. We're about 160 employees now. We represent about 100 or so brands. And that's about all I'm going to talk about from the business standpoint. What I'm actually going to talk to you about is a little theory that I had about a year ago. I was given an industry award as a creative person in whatever. Not that I'm being disparaging of it, but awards just are weird to me. And so I was forced to draw a diagram of what I thought the future of social was going to be. And a lot of people made these funny diagrams. And instead, I went and drew something from a molecular biological way. So I'm going to share with you a thing. I gave this talk about 6 months ago, and I got an amazing amount of response from it. And now I'm writing a book about it. But it basically is looking at the biomimicry of social systems. So if you look at media and where we sit today, you know, modern media, modern broadcast media, in my mind, was really invented by the church. They had the Word of God, and the Word of God was only allowed to certain people that could transcribe that Word of God. And that Word of God was a lot of power, and it was a lot of control. And so, you know, pre-Renaissance, you pretty much had peasants, and you had the clergy and very rich people. And they would ring the bell, and you would aggregate together at 7 a.m., and you would have Mass, and you would hear about the Word of God. And the distribution network that was created around that was local in nature, right? And so I would take one message, and I would broadcast it out to these local nodes on a network. And this is really about network architecture, not necessarily about religion. But I would broadcast that out, and I had a consistency of message. And that message was really about dogma and iconography and these incontrovertible truths. And if you do this, then this will happen. And if you don't do this, then you're going to hell. And so it had a very powerful ability because the nature of the content was really telling people what to think and what to do and how to do it. And so I look at that, and I grew up in a rural town in Mississippi as a very different human being. And I didn't believe all that, especially since I was totally raised on television. And if you look at television architecture or radio architecture, it's kind of the same thing. They ring the bell at 7 p.m., and we all gather around the TV, and we watch these ideas. And a lot of the ideas, especially from the advertising community, are all about dogma and fear and iconography. And that's the way that in my mind, modern advertising has really positioned itself. If you use the American Express card, then you too will have 7% body fat with a beautiful woman walking down the beach. And if you don't use scope, then you should have fear because you will have bad breath. And it's all of these ideas that really, in my mind, defined a culture of people. It allows for governments to behave poorly. It allows for people that control the media architecture to put bad ideas inside of us, is my opinion. And so I think that social media is a massive revolution. I think that we have no concept whatsoever of what's happening right now, except for the fact that there is fundamental change happening. And so if you think about what Facebook is, or what Twitter is, or what my iPhone is, and what it will be, I see that as 1.2 billion organisms connected to one another in a very interesting holonic structure. And so when I got that award, I go out to the desert every year, and I usually go out there and try to be by myself or with my boyfriend. And I take time to just kind of unplug and decompress. And I was sitting there thinking about my life, and I'm about to turn 40, and I was thinking about my life, and I was like, what have I done, and what have I accomplished, and why do I give a fuck what, XYZ person thinks, and what's really happening, and, now I gotta draw this drawing for this award, and what the fuck am I gonna do? And so I'm sitting there, and I remembered, because life moves so quickly, that when I was 14 and 15, my biggest thing in life was biology. I was that kid that skipped high school and went and worked in a platelet research lab connected to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Memphis because a biology teacher thought I was gifted. And so when I was 14, 15, I entered a competition. And just to show you a nerdy picture, I ended up winning second place in the world for discovering a region on the human platelet. And I missed those days of really being a total fucking nerd and loving biology. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, wait, if this is 1 billion organisms connected via a packet switch network, which removes time and distance from the equation, right, that's very important. It's hard to ring a bell on the internet and have everybody tune in at 7 p.m. It's actually impossible, right? The architecture has changed. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, if I want to reach 1 billion people, which is the goal of this new company that I've created, if I want to reach 1 billion people, then I need to look at it architecturally differently. And so I drew this. This is, in my mind, this concept of the meme cytoplasm. A meme is just like a gene, right? A gene is a sequence of code that helps us evolve. It's a nugget of information. It's just information, right? Quaternary information that allows us to evolve as human beings or life in general from an evolutionary standpoint. And I think the same thing is what artists create. Artists create these fantastical versions of our world that help us understand things. And when they create those things, whether it's great music or great art or a great movie or a great screenplay or soundtrack, right? What they're doing is they're putting these patterns out into the world that we identify with, and we raise our hand and we say, I like that. That feels good. That gives me an emotion. That gives me nostalgia, right? That gives me love and happiness and joy and anticipation and all of these things. And it looks very similar when you're 1 billion people connected via these devices with time and distance removed to cellular structures that happened when life started to evolve. And so this used to be my password on everything. It's not anymore, so I'm not giving away anything. This is a Volvox. When I was a nerdy kid, this was my favorite thing in the world to find in pond water. But this is actually 50,000 unique organisms connected to one another in a community that is a holonic structure. Every piece of it is the same, yet they differentiate. Some of them become photosynthetic receptors so that they can make energy for the living being, for the whole community, right? Some of them grow little tails, little flagella, so they can swim towards the light in phototropic behavior. Some of them become daughter colonies that help reproduce, right? And then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I was like, wow, it's like, but do we have the tendrils that then connect these things together? This is mycelium. Mycelium is how fungus grow, right? Very simple organisms. And actually, the largest organism in the world is a giant fungus that lives in the ground in the lower right-hand corner of the state of Oregon. It's like 40 square miles of this organism, right? Because it spread as a contagious thing. It spread through all of these different mycelium and through cells that were differentiating and replicating. And then I had this amazing kind of eureka moment because I found this image on the internet. This is Facebook. This is a topological view of Facebook. This is what a social organism looks like, with 1 billion points connected. And then I said, well, what are those bright spots? Those bright spots are celebrities and influencers and people that have something that they are doing that is attracting a mass audience. When I first started TheAudience, it was all about Hugh Jackman and Charlize Theron and Mark Wahlberg and Russell Brand and all of these people. It's not that way anymore. In the last 3 years, we have seen a fundamental shift of celebrity into people like Nash Greer or Acacia Brindley. Nash Greer has 6.8 million Vine followers, and I think he's 15, right? So he has the reach of most cable networks in America on a daily basis. And so if my job is to reach 1 billion people, then I need to understand first this new architecture. Second, I need to understand what kind of content works inside of these systems, because it's not fear, and it's not dogma, and it's not telling somebody what they want to hear or what they think, right? I learned that the very hard way. When I was launching Toy Story 3, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull believed in me, the creators of Pixar, tremendously, and they gave me the keys to the kingdom, literally. I guess that's kind of a pun. And they gave me the keys to the kingdom of Disney because they gave me the archive. And what I learned are 2 basic ideas when I was launching Toy Story 3. Number one was Toy Story 3 had been 11 years since the last movie. So all the kids that were 6, 7, and 8 that fell in love with Buzz and Woody were now 17, 18, 19. They were in college, and the billboards and the TV ads were geared towards women and kids. Some 4-quadrant marketing thing I don't really understand. And they were geared towards this, and those kids weren't even watching TV. It was the dawn of Facebook, right? They were in college on Facebook. And so what we did is we said, we're gonna reach these kids in Facebook. We called them the Andyites, right? We're gonna reach these kids in Facebook. So I went to the marketing teams at Disney, and they said, congratulations, here's my movie poster. Go make it viral. And I was like, okay. But by the way, here's the copy. Hey kids, here's the new Toy Story 3 poster. Isn't it great? Within 5 minutes of that being on Facebook, it had 600 uses of the word fuck. No, it's not fucking great. It's a 3 on a fucking black background. Fuck you, Disney. You ruined my childhood. Thanks. Literally. And I went to the guy who made the poster, and I said to him, I was like, why do they hate this so much? Like, it's not that bad. I mean, it's not that great, but it's not that bad. It's the yellow 3 with the black background. And he looked at me and he said, Oliver, he's like, it's not that they hate the poster, it's that they hate your tone, because you were telling them in the rhetorical voice what to think. And I was like, huh. So I was like, I'll try anything once. So I put it back up. Here's the new Toy Story 3 poster, period. Yay, we love Disney. There's a snake in my boot. Literally, 100% positive sentiment. Never seen anything so binary in my life. And that was the first thing I learned. It was like, wow, this content's got to be different, right? There's got to be something different. And then fast forward a few months when I got access to the archive because we were running out of marketing materials. And they gave me this great image, a gouache painting from the original storyboards with Buzz and Woody arm in arm. And it said, you've got a friend in me. That thing was shared 250,000 times inside of a platform that was only about 300 million people in size. Basically, every single person in Facebook saw it. It was one of the most fundamental shifts in kind of modern movie marketing that ever occurred because we earned a reach of about 200 million people via this one art that captured nostalgia and an emotion. And sure enough, I can't say this anymore because of Frozen, but after exhaustive studies and fights with ad agencies and whatnot, 42% of the exiting audience of the highest grossing animated movie of all time said they came off of Facebook because they were 18 to 24-year-olds who fell back in love with the story. And it was a great movie, and that was an emotional thing. And so out of all these things I've learned, and looking at this from a biomimicry kind of standpoint, I want to share with you 7 rules that I've learned from doing this now for about 7 years. The first is that if this is an organism, then it needs to be fed. And not one video, thousands of pieces of content. We now create about 25,000 pieces of content a month at TheAudience, and we are a tiny little company that is so insignificant compared to all of you, right? But what's amazing is that we learned that there were so many difficulties in moving up and down corporations. Who approves this content? What's it supposed to say? What's the tone? If we're not going to tell people what to think, then how do we tap into an emotion, and what do we do? And so we've had to build a lot of tools and systems that help us do it. The first Mickey Mouse image we put up on Mickey Mouse's Facebook page took 30 days to approve by Disney Legal. 30 days. How in the world am I going to keep up, with current times if I'm waiting for 30 days for every piece of content approval? So we had to be iterative publishers. We had to learn how to publish. Oreo taught an industry about that at large scale at the Super Bowl, right? We've been having to do that every day of our lives for the last 7 years because the social fabric evolves and changes so quickly. The next thing is that life reacts to stimuli. This living organism that we're creating together reacts to emotions. And it's mainly the emotions that sit in the top of this. You can't really read it, but I'll read it to you. Optimism and love and anticipation and joy and ecstasy and vigilance and surprise and wonder. They do not react well to being told what to do. The organism actually has an immune system. If you put hate inside of this organism, people pounce on it. They purge the system. And so we see that continuously. When you spam it, when you blanket it with ads, and I know we have businesses that we need to maintain, and I know that these platforms have to be greedy because they're now public companies. But wow, you kill the system when you start disobeying these rules. People flee. Go ask MySpace, when MySpace started shutting off applications. My application, Rever, the video sharing service, was the first application they shut off. Every time you type the word R-E-V-V-E-R, the people at Fox, at MySpace, thought that they would just put ... and they would start censoring the platform. It should be a great warning to platforms like Facebook that are now saying, you know what, your content, I don't think that's worthy enough for our platform. Memes, cats, although the people love them, we need 1,000-word articles, right? That's very dangerous territory. Throughout civilization, we've seen that. And now that these people are connected via 1 billion unique people connected together as one organism, they can flee and they can go to the next platform so fast. It's a very, very volatile place we live in. The other thing is that positivity is really magical inside of these systems. One of the greatest things that I think Facebook did was not have a dislike button. They had the like button. One of the best steps forward that I've seen YouTube do recently is integrate Google Plus so that Identity was trying to get rid of the trolls on YouTube. We have a saying in our office that you don't read the YouTube comments, right? Because it was such a horrible, negative place. And so by this positive reinforcement, right? And when someone likes your content and shares your content, it's driving the metabolism of this organism that we've created, right? It's these great cascading moments that happen. And this is this point about pollution, right? Life rids itself of pollution. It shits. And what it also does is that it rids itself, the social organism rids itself of hate speech, it rids itself of bad ideas, it rids of negative ideas, controlling ideas, it liberates people, it becomes a lifeline for people that protest in the Ukraine, it becomes a lifeline for homosexuals in America that just went under attack by a bunch of state legislation to try to really introduce segregation in America again. I was at the forefront of that fight. A guy from my high school, I grew up in a very small place with small-minded people, a guy from my high school tried to introduce legislation in Tennessee that said we refuse the right to service homosexuals. If you're homosexual, we have the right to not service you as any business. And I remembered segregation, and so I created this meme that said we refuse the right to service politicians and service homosexuals. And I put his phone number on it, and then I put his email address. I put his family's phone numbers and email addresses on it too, and I said, give him a call, y'all, just to tell him what you think. Within the 4-hour plane ride that I did from New York to LA, it was shared 20,000 times. It reached 1.2 million people. It shut down the phone system of the state Congress. And he pulled that legislation 2 days later, and then basically just backed out of politics. So that's the immune system at work, right? Because our society doesn't have time for that anymore. The other fascinating thing that I've learned as well is flow dynamics are really important to evolution. Every time you put up a paywall, every time you send someone to a fucking microsite, every time that you break the flow of sharing, you've broken the ability for it to evolve. I've never understood this, why people market their marketing. It makes no sense to me, right? Because if you look at this tree, what this tree is evolution taught us that water from the ground needs to flow unobstructed into the sky because of transpiration and evaporation. And in order to do that, it needs a direct path. And if you break that path, then the thing dies. And the same way is with an idea, with a viral idea. You're going to hate me for this, but I just introduced this song to the world called Selfie. You might have heard it. It's two women talking in the bathroom in the most vapid of ways about smoking cigarettes and needing to take a selfie and getting laid. And what's interesting is not that it's highly viral. It is the #1 viral object, I think, in the world right now. It's the fastest to platinum since Lady Gaga 5 years ago. From a song standpoint, it's #1 in, I think, 7 countries. It's 8 weeks old, 55 million views on YouTube, no media spin on it whatsoever. 100 influencers launched it into the network on the video itself. But when I sold the song and the band sold the song to Universal, they had an amazing policy that said that if that video, if a derivative work was made of it, then because of their fight with YouTube or whatever it is, they will shut off any derivative content on mobile. And the second that those rules of sharing went into place, we saw the thing just drop. And we were like, what's happening? Why? It was about to be #1 in Brazil and it just fell off the planet. We're like, oh, that's because the 43,000 copies of it that we allowed to happen when we were just a little indie company without Universal, when we allowed those things to happen, the Harlem Shake was happening. And then suddenly when we put those rules of sharing from the draconian system on top of it, it instantly killed it. We just reopened it 2 days ago after literally I have now more gray hairs fighting with legal. And suddenly it's now back up in the charts. It shows you that these sharing systems and mobile and, as you know, is really important with kids. I don't know if you know, they consume content on these phones. And so something like Selfie or the derivative works of Dick Pic or Let Me Drink Some Protein or any of these things that came out of it, which were meme-based content, right? When that happens, right, and we shut that sharing off, it kills the organism. And talking about memes are genes of culture, and so we need to have them reproduce. We need hundreds of thousands of people to make their own content that says, but first let me blank. We want that as artists. It's the most sincere form of flattery. We want them to replicate it. And it does not mean you will not sell fewer records, as we are the fastest to platinum since Gaga, right? So none of that sense, it's about reaching massive audiences. It's about engaging them with emotion. It's about letting them become their own meme factories so that they can own the content themselves and share it. It's that you've got a friend in me moment, because if somebody sends you that image, you know exactly what they are saying to you. They love you. It's very emotive. And the other thing is these things are becoming more complex, not less complex. But just like a kid's wall, when they used to put up their favorite things, and that identified them and gave them identity, the organization of these systems is happening through affinities, through affiliations. When we did the structure for Obama, it wasn't just that the president had a Facebook page. It was that we had Latinos for Obama, women for Obama, pet lovers for Obama, LGBT community for Obama, college students for Obama. And then when Mitt Romney put a dog on the hood of his car and had a photo of it, you can be guaranteed that the pet lovers for Obama got that message first. And that's where that sparks. or when Binders Full of Women happened, right? And I know some of this is cultural reference to America, but I think it kind of hit the internet pretty hard. When Binders Full of Women happened, we had 1.2 million women for Obama ready to go. And all you need to do is share that message or meme it out a little bit, and suddenly the organization structures itself, and you have a new form that's arising. So 3 years ago, I'm actually doing really good on time. 3 years ago, we started with this concept of these A-list celebrities, these bright spots. We now reach about 1.2 billion unique people a month in our publishing system. And we had to build these tools that allowed us to do it. And this is not Buddy Media, this is not that. This is a private system that we built. The number one thing it does is handles that 30-day approval problem. I have 1,400 people that I talk to at least once or twice a day to approve content that is being created in an iterative fashion, to turn them into editorial calendars, to publish in real time across 8 different platforms: Facebook, Google, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Vine, right? They're all important. Everybody always is like, Oliver, what's the new platform? I'm like, they're all important. If I want to reach a 15-year-old male right now, go to Vine. Because if you actually go look at Vine, that's how Selfie got started, was Nash Greer with his 6.8 million fans. There were many famous people in that video, but if you read the comments, every other comment is, oh my God, there's Nash. Oh my God, there's Nash, there's Nash. Like there's Ian Somerhalder in the fucking video, right? And you know, all these other celebrities, and it's like, oh my God, Nash. I didn't know who Nash was. Luckily, my staff did, right? Now I do, right? But it's fascinating. And the data you get out of it is really amazing. You know, everybody talks about big data this and big data that, and it's like make a computer to try to tell you what to think. It's not that hard. It's common sense. If Facebook can tell me a list of 100,000 people that moved from New York to LA, I probably think that most of those people got to buy a car. So that's a life moment. And so if I'm Ford or a smart company that's looking at this, I better make content that has no time and distance. It's not about a summer sales event or President's Day sale. It's about that life moment that you connect the dots with these people, right? And give them either great utility or great value, right? And so social changes everything. And what it's done for us is that we learned how to market a movie differently. Spring Breakers was the first domestic release in America that, first of all, we weren't even allowed in the theaters. We had to rent the first 2 theaters to prove that social could sell a movie, because the distributors told us that if you don't spend $15 million in traditional media, you are not allowed in our theaters. And we're like, how about we use social media to literally break the record for the most number of sales per theater that year and the following 3 years, right? Broke the record because we targeted only New York and only LA and only fans of Vanessa Hudgens and Harmony Korine and all the people, and Gucci Mane. We launched the trailer through him. He's got 8 million people, right? It's just common sense. Luckily, we had a partner in A24 that was smart enough and actually daring enough to try something new. Because I sit in meeting after meeting after meeting that's like, oh, your social thing is so cute, but I'm gonna go spend $100 million over here on TV. You get 50 grand. That's sweet, that's cute. When the data shows us that it can do everything, TV becomes an after effect, if you even want it to be there, right? It learns how you promote an event. We've sold about 20 million tickets over the last 2 years to festivals. We launched Tomorrowland in America. Tomorrowland is a big festival in Europe. Nobody knew about it in America. And so you can only tell so many people how great a festival is going to be, or you can have the artist tell them how great a festival is going to be. So we created a surrogate network, just like with Obama. We created a surrogate network where 30 artists shared their experiences from Tomorrowland and talked about what an amazing, safe, wonderful experience this would be. And the crowd that we brought to the rural hills of Georgia, where the parking lot of a Walmart has 20 arrests over a weekend, right? Not one arrest during a festival with 150,000 tickets sold. Unbelievable. We attracted the right people, we sold them efficiently, we used them, we found the right audience to come to those events. That's a photo of me, by the way, that's called White Raver Rafting. This guy, Steve Aoki, who's an internet celebrity that we work with, who's won the Guinness Book of World Records now for the #1 touring ever. 310 performances last year, sold through Facebook. Through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We actually changed the promotion model so that we get a small amount of money, $500 from every location from the local promoter, so that they don't go buy banner ads, but instead they use Steve's reach of about 25 million people a month to target people in Pittsburgh and say, hey, you're a Steve Aoki fan, come into town. I'm gonna throw cake in your face. I'll put you on a raft, right? And it sells out every time. We moved a nation with this, right? It's really powerful when you can connect the dots. We had 50 state pages, right? Then we had these affinity groups, Latinos, LGBT, women, et cetera. We created this architecture so that we could pop those things inside of the social graph when they were popular, when it was important. Right? We also started 18 months before the election because we knew that the bidding system, once the Republican candidate came in, would just flood the market with money, and so we started buying fans in Facebook much earlier. So I think our cost of acquisition was like 15 cents, where theirs was like $4, something ridiculous, because they just jacked it up, right, in the auction system. Selfie. This has been fun. It's changing how we work with emerging artists. Right? It's teaching the old system to embrace the new system and to change itself. Changing copyright law is like rewriting the Bible. It's really hard work, but it's inevitable that it will happen, right? We have to learn to share ideas in a fluid, organic way. This is a new fun one. This is Ford's new ad. We love Ford. We work with them a lot. I think they, as a company, have done remarkable things. Right? They're now almost double the efficiency of most automobiles on the road. This is a little ad they made in reaction to Cadillac, right? It wasn't really official. I got hold of it because I believed in it and popped it. It now has 1.1 million views in the last week. It changed the conversation about what it meant to be an American. Should we be buying more stuff, or should we be conserving our planet? And it was very deliberate. It was very, very smart. And we worked with Team Detroit and the WPP guys on this. And it's just a fascinating case study of how you can change a conversation. And then this one, which I think you'll hear about from our colleague from Unilever in a minute. We got behind the Dove Beauty sketches and created about 450 derivative pieces of content that tied together mothers and their daughters on Mother's Day and took a great piece of art that was created in Brazil and took it and spread it across the world. It became the most branded piece of viral content ever, and we, behind the scenes, seeded that in the right places and kept the conversation going for months, right? And it means something to be able to use a brand's power to put great ideas into the world, like women's self-esteem, or to use a brand's power to make great music and great art. Because at the end of the day, this whole reason I'm here is to try to convince at least one of you that art matters, that culture matters, and that you sit on so much money that I beg of you to start putting it into creativity. And not just your own people that are wildly creative at your agencies, but to actually get behind these artists, because they can be your best friends and your most powerful tools to reach a mass audience in a really unique and interesting way. And so this is what we do. I was forced to put this slide in by my colleagues. I hate selling things. But we do this. We look at your systems. We look at your campaigns. We execute them for you. We create content. We challenge your lawyers. That's one of our biggest things. I'm called the crowbar. I go and talk to lawyers all the time. All my parents are lawyers. I was raised by wolves. I'm used to it. But it's interesting because those become the biggest impediments to any change is the status quo. And I call it corporate Munchausen syndrome by proxy. There are a lot of people out there that make it sick so they can be the one that fixes it. But we don't need to make it sick. We can let this organism thrive and have a really fascinating new era in our collective culture. So Thank you very much. I'm Oliver. I appreciate it.
Look, one of the things you do, yeah, is I'm just thinking, Rihanna, terrible actress, but she was in that film Battleship.
Yes.
Why was
I do not represent her. She was in that movie because she's very famous in social.
Right. I'm choosing her because it's not one of your clients. But anyway, she was in Battleship. She's a terrible actress, but she has 26 million followers. So she helped promote the movie. Seems natural. So part of your business is doing that too with your celebrities.
That's right.
Do you get into trouble with the studios?
Yep.
Because okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, I do.
Because they're saying, why should we pay this actor again?
And so this is the biggest argument, and it's one of the reasons that I kind of soured on the studios a little bit, because they came out publicly and were like, don't work with the audience. And I was like, why not? I was like, if Mark Wahlberg can reach 50 million unique people through his social channels that, by the way, we created, we invested a tremendous amount of money and time and energy. It's not like Mark Wahlberg is out there taking fucking photos of himself. They're Getty images and Wire images, and we have to pay photographers and use the content and build storylines and architectures and program this content. So it's not the studios, right? But on top of that, it's really efficient to introduce the TED, and Universal actually worked with us. It was wildly efficient to introduce the teddy bear from TED through Mark Wahlberg's social channels in really fun, creative ways. They played ball with us. It makes no sense that you would then go over and try to buy ads around Mark Wahlberg at an auction system that is extraordinarily expensive when you can go through Mark Wahlberg and tell a story and amplify that and reach the core audience of people that you should be reaching. It's the same story in everything we do. And some of the incumbents they literally guffaw at me. How dare you? I paid him $2 million to be in that movie. That's my feed. It's an argument.
Big round of applause to Oliver Luckett.